Welcome back, Deep Divers. Really excited about today's topic. It's something that affects every single one of us, but, it's often the first thing we cut when things get busy.
Absolutely. It's fundamental.
We're diving into Chapter 16 of a fascinating new book. It's called The Awakening: How to Learn to Love Sleep, the Best Medicine for Your Brain.
Great title.
Isn't it? So our mission today is really to unpack the key insights here. We want to help you understand not just that sleep is important, I think we all kind of know that, but why. Why it's evolutionarily non-negotiable. And crucially, how to genuinely prioritize it for, your long-term health.
Right, moving beyond just knowing to actually doing.
Exactly. And the author's personal story.
Right.
Wow. He went from this sleep is for the weak mindset to a complete turnaround. It's quite the eye-opener.
It really is. Started from a very different place.
You'd think reading that chapter title, he was always a sleep advocate,
Yeah.
right? But nope. His awakening, as he calls it, was definitely a journey. He talks about his medical residency. Just grueling.
Yeah.
Averaging nearly 120 hours a week, often working for like 30 hours straight.
Unbelievable hours. Almost hard to imagine.
And the advice he got back then: sleep can be sacrificed.
That was the culture.
And he definitely lived it. He tells this story, this really shocking incident of acute sleep deprivation. He'd volunteered for an extra shift, been up for over 60 hours, no sleep.
60 hours.
Driving home, he kept nodding off, kept falling asleep at the wheel. So he pulls over in Baltimore's Patterson Park, thinking, okay, just 30 minutes, rest my eyes.
Just a quick nap. Right?
Wakes up 6 hours later, middle of the night, rough part of town, and finds these weird bite marks on his arms and syringes scattered around him.
Oh my gosh. That's terrifying.
In his reaction, he just dismissed it, called it artifacts of residency, like it was normal.
It's pretty stunning to think that, less than 20 years ago, that kind of disregard for sleep wasn't just tolerated, it was almost encouraged, especially in medicine. The author makes this powerful comparison, saying it was like telling doctors to smoke and drink heavily on the job.
Wow.
And the data supports it. Studies found sleep-deprived medical staff make far more errors, cause more deaths. He even shares his own pretty embarrassing moment. He literally face-planted into the drapery of a patient during surgery after being awake for over 48 hours.
No way. Was the patient okay?
Thankfully, yes.
Yeah.
But it just shows the danger.
Right, absolutely.
And what's maybe even more worrying than that kind of acute incident is chronic sleep debt.
Right, the slow burn.
Exactly. That's what builds up when we consistently get less than, say, 7 hours a night. And study after study links this insufficient sleep to, well, a whole range of bad health outcomes.
But what sort of things?
Everything from getting colds more easily to a significantly higher risk of metabolic problems like type 2 diabetes. It can also really mess with your hormones.
So, okay, that's the personal impact. But what about the bigger picture? How's this affecting society? Is there like an alarming trend?
There really is. Matthew Walker, he's the director of the Center for Human Sleep Science at Berkeley. He puts it very starkly.
What does he say?
He says, the decimation of sleep throughout industrialized nations is having a catastrophic impact on our health, our life expectancy, our safety, our productivity, and the education of our children.
Catastrophic impact. Wow, that's heavy.
It really drives home that this isn't just about feeling a bit groggy, it's a public health crisis.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How many of us have had that sleep is for the weak idea at some point?
Probably most of us, at least briefly.
The author definitely did. He actually calls his pre-awakening thinking his Mount Stupid argument back in 2012.
Mount Stupid, I like that.
He was arguing that 5 or 6 hours was plenty, that it was a pity we needed to waste time in bed at all. He even fantasized about skipping sleep altogether.
And that's where his friend Kirk Persley comes in. Former Navy SEAL, now a doctor.
Right, Parsley.
He asked this simple, almost Socratic question. If sleep is so unimportant, then why hasn't evolution gotten rid of it?
That's a good question.
And when you actually stop and think about it, the logic is kind of unbreakable. When we're asleep, we're useless, right? Not finding food, not reproducing, not protecting anyone.
And vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable to
Right.
predators, enemies, anything. So why would evolution let us spend maybe a third of our lives totally out of it, totally exposed, unless it was absolutely critical?
Makes sense. Natural selection should have weeded it out ages ago if it wasn't essential.
Exactly, hundreds of millions of years ago. And the proof is everywhere. Every single animal we know of sleeps in some form, no exceptions found.
Really, every single one.
Yep. Horses sleep standing up. Dolphins sleep with half their brain active. Even great white sharks have a kind of restful state. Elephants get about 4 hours. Brown bats get 19.
19 hours.
Yeah. The amount varies wildly, but the act of sleeping, it's universal, evolutionarily non-negotiable.
Okay, so evolution demands it. That brings us to the practical question. How much do we need? What's the optimal amount for humans, according to the science?
Well, our sleep is affected by light, noise, all sorts of things, and we can adapt to getting less sleep for a while.
We get used to feeling tired.
Right. But the studies, when you look at them consistently, they point to a consensus range, about 7.5 to 8.5 hours a night.
7.5 to 8.5.
Yeah. There's even some interesting evidence from studies where people lived in dark caves, completely cut off from natural light cycles. They naturally fell into about an 8-hour sleep pattern. Suggests it might be pretty hardwired.
Wow. So it really is fundamental.
It's a biological imperative.
Okay, let's dig into the impact of not getting enough sleep. Starting with the immediate stuff, like what happens after just one bad night?
Oh, the effects are pretty immediate and significant, especially on physical and cognitive performance.
You mentioned athletes earlier.
Right. For athletes, it's like a performance killer. Endurance drops. VO2 max, that's your maximal oxygen uptake, goes down. Even pure strength, like your 1 rep max, is weaker.
And injuries.
Injury risk more than doubles if they're getting less than 6 hours. It's huge.
Wow.
But flip that around, good sleep. It's like the ultimate legal performance enhancer, that Stanford basketball study you mentioned.
Yeah.
Players aimed for 10 hours of sleep a day. 10 hours. And their shooting accuracy improved by 9%. Their sprint times got faster.
Just from sleeping more.
Just from sleeping more. You see top pros like LeBron James making sleep a massive part of their recovery. They know.
But why do we often not feel how bad it is if the effects are so stark?
That's a great question. It comes down to adaptation. We underestimate the impact because we get used to functioning at a lower level. It's called baseline resetting.
Baseline resetting.
Yeah. The author uses a neat analogy. Think about an old standard definition TV. It looks fine, right, if that's all you've ever known.
Sure.
But then you see a 4K screen. Suddenly you realize how much detail you're missing. Your old TV wasn't clear at all.
I get it.
Experiencing really good restorative sleep after chronic deprivation can feel like that. Like upgrading your brain's operating system. You suddenly realize how foggy you were before.
I can relate to that, actually.
Yeah.
The first time I really buckled down on sleep hygiene for a week, that morning, clarity was noticeable. Like the fog just lifted.
Exactly. It's like seeing in 4K for the first time.
And then there's this concept he mentions, old man blood. That sounds alarming.
It does, doesn't it? It came from Kirk Parsley again, the Navy SEAL doctor. He was testing these elite SEALs. Physically, they look like perfect specimens, peak condition.
Right. Fittest guys on the planet.
But their blood work, it told a different story. Their hormone levels, their inflammatory markers, they look like men decades older.
Just from lack of sleep.
Primarily due to the chronic, severe sleep deprivation their jobs demanded. And the author had this moment of realization himself. He remembered his own not thin Peter phase.
Right, you mentioned that. Elevated insulin, high triglycerides.
And testosterone in the bottom 5%. At the time, he blamed it all on his diet. But looking back, he realized that decade of terrible sleep was almost certainly a huge factor catching up to him.
So it really shows how interconnected sleep, diet, and long-term health are.
Absolutely. He even says now he thinks a few months of perfect sleep back then could have fixed maybe 80% of his metabolic issues, even if his diet wasn't great.
It's a bold claim.
It is, but it highlights sleep's profound impact on metabolism. There's this one study, really striking.
Yeah.
They took healthy young people and restricted their sleep severely, just 4.5 hours a night for only 4 days.
Just 4 days.
Yep. And in those 4 days, they developed insulin levels like obese middle-aged diabetics, and their ability to handle glucose dropped by about 50%.
Whoa, that fast.
That fast. And that finding the link between sleep restriction and poor glucose metabolism is one of the most consistent findings in all of sleep science. It's solid.
So what's driving that? What's the mechanism?
Well, a big piece of the puzzle seems to be stress. Poor sleep and high stress feed each other. They both trigger the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response.
Okay.
That releases cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol raises your blood pressure, raises your blood sugar, and over time, that leads to what's called stress-induced insulin resistance. Your body just doesn't respond to insulin properly because it's constantly stressed.
So it's a feedback loop. Bad sleep, stress, cortisol, insulin problems, potentially worse sleep.
You got it. And it doesn't stop there. Poor sleep also messes with your hunger hormones.
How so?
It basically turns down leptin, that's the hormone that tells your brain I'm full, and it cranks up ghrelin, the one that screams I'm starving.
That explains why I crave pizza and ice cream when I haven't slept well.
Exactly. You're biologically driven to seek out high-calorie, often sugary foods. Studies show sleep-deprived people eat, on average, about 300 extra calories the next day without even realizing it.
300 calories. That adds up fast.
It really does.
And this constant fight or flight state you mentioned, that must be bad for the heart, too.
Definitely. If your sympathetic nervous system is always on permanent alert, your heart rate stays higher, your blood pressure stays higher, it's just working harder all the time.
The author tracked this himself, right?
He did. He noticed on nights with poor sleep, his resting heart rate was higher the next day, and his heart rate variability, which is a good sign of cardiovascular flexibility, was lower. Both are indicators of stress on the system.
So is there direct evidence linking lack of sleep to heart attacks?
Yes, there's compelling evidence. One powerful type of study called Mendelian randomization, it uses genetic variations, sort of like a natural experiment, looked at this.
Okay, what did it find?
It confirmed that having a genetic predisposition for sleeping less than 6 hours a night was linked to about a 20% higher risk of having a heart attack.
20% higher risk, okay.
But here's the really fascinating part. It also found that sleeping between 6 and 9 hours a night was associated with a lower risk of heart attack,
Lower risk, that makes sense.
even in people who had a high genetic risk for heart disease.
Wait, really? So good sleep could actually counteract some genetic risk.
That's what the data suggests, that getting sufficient sleep might actually help mitigate some of that inherited predisposition. It's incredibly powerful when you think about it.
That is incredible. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about the brain? We know sleep affects how we think day to day, but what about long-term brain health?
This is a huge area and really important for health span living healthier for longer. For a long time, people thought poor sleep was just a symptom of diseases like Alzheimer's.
Right, like the disease caused the bad sleep.
Exactly. But now, research is increasingly pointing the other way. Chronic poor sleep is now seen as a powerful potential cause, or at least a major contributing factor to Alzheimer's disease and other dementias.
So it's not just about function, it's about the physical health of the brain itself.
Precisely. Sleep seems crucial for maintaining the brain's long-term health.
How does that work? What actually happens in the brain while we sleep?
The author uses this great analogy. Think of falling asleep like taking a submarine dive into the deep ocean.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
First, your sub plunges down into NREM sleep, non-REM sleep, especially deep NREM, or slow-wave sleep. This dominates the first half of the night.
The deep dive, what happens down there?
Two really critical things. First, memory consolidation. Your brain takes short-term memories, kind of clears them out of the hippocampus, like clearing your inbox, and files the important ones away in the cortex for long-term storage.
So that's why sleep helps learning and memory.
Directly. There's a clear link. The more deep sleep you get, the better you do on memory tests the next day. But maybe even more crucial for long-term health is the second function,
Which is?
brain cleaning. During deep sleep, this internal waste disposal system kicks in. Cerebrospinal fluid literally washes between your brain cells, flushing out metabolic byproducts that build up during the day.
Like cleaning out the trash.
Exactly. And critically, it sweeps away toxic proteins like amyloid beta and tau, the ones strongly linked to Alzheimer's disease. If you don't get enough deep sleep, these proteins can build up night after night.
Wow. So lack of deep sleep could literally lead to the physical hallmarks of Alzheimer's accumulating.
That's the concern, yes.
Okay, so that's deep NREM. What happens next in our submarine dive?
Later in the night, the sub starts rising back towards the surface. This is when you enter REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep.
The dreaming stage.
That's the one. Your eyes dart around, you have vivid dreams, but your body is mostly paralyzed, thankfully. REM sleep is vital too. For younger people, it's important for brain development.
And for adults?
For adults, it seems crucial for creativity, problem solving.
Yeah.
It helps your brain make new connections, find those aha moments. It's also important for learning physical skills, procedural memory. Think musicians or athletes practicing movements.
Interesting. What else?
A really fascinating role of REM sleep is emotional processing. It helps us kind of detach the emotion from the memory of an experience, process it overnight.
Is that why things often feel less overwhelming in the morning?
That seems to be a big part of it. It helps take the sting out. They've seen in combat veterans with PTSD, they often have suppressed REM sleep, maybe because of high-stress hormones like noradrenaline. They don't get that overnight emotional therapy.
That makes so much sense.
And lack of REM also messes with our emotional intelligence, makes it harder to read other people's faces accurately. You might see threats where there aren't any.
So, putting this together with Alzheimer's, it sounds like a vicious cycle.
It really does. The disease itself can disrupt sleep patterns. But then the disrupted sleep, particularly the lack of deep sleep for cleaning, and maybe REM for processing, might actually accelerate the disease progression.
And you mentioned sleep problems can show up years before diagnosis.
Yeah, sometimes years before any noticeable cognitive decline. It might be one of the earliest warning signs, even if we didn't recognize it as such before.
Is there any good news here? Can improving sleep help?
Yes, definitely. Studies show that older adults with better sleep quality have a lower risk of developing mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and Alzheimer's. And one study suggested that successfully treating a sleep disorder could potentially delay the onset of MCI by around 11 years.
11 years. That's significant.
Hugely significant.
But you also mentioned deep sleep declines naturally with age.
Unfortunately, yes. It starts to decrease even in our late 20s or early 30s and gets worse in middle age. The exact reason isn't perfectly clear, maybe linked to changes in growth hormone.
So that middle age period is really critical for prevention.
It seems that way. Getting good sleep in your 40s and 60s appears especially important for reducing Alzheimer's risk later on.
It really puts the author's reflection into perspective. All those years, he thought he was on top of his game on 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, he realizes he was probably performing way below his potential. And worse, actively increasing his risk of long-term illness.
That old boast, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
He now thinks he might have been doing a lot to actually hasten that day. It's a sobering thought.
Okay, this is all incredibly motivating to actually do something about our sleep. But where do we start? Many people turn to sleeping pills. What does the chapter say about those?
It raises some serious cautions. Common FDA-approved drugs like Ambien or Lunesta. They might knock you out, but they don't necessarily provide true restorative sleep.
How so?
They tend to induce more of a sedation, a sleep-like state that doesn't seem to deliver the same benefits of natural deep or REM sleep. Some studies even found Ambien decreased deep sleep. Plus, there are side effects like sleepwalking or memory issues.
So they're not really fixing the underlying problem.
Often not.
Yeah.
Newer drugs called orexin inhibitors show more promise in promoting natural sleep cycles, but they're very expensive right now. And older drugs like benzodiazepines, Valium for instance, are generally discouraged, especially for older adults, due to links with cognitive decline and falls.
So if pills aren't the main answer, what is? Are there any helpful aids mentioned?
A couple are noted. Trazodone, which is actually an old antidepressant used off-label in very low doses, seems to help improve sleep architecture, the balance of sleep stages for some people. And the supplement ashwagandha has shown some positive results in studies too.
Okay, but what's the absolute first step?
The book argues the critical first step is psychological. It's about fundamentally changing our mindset. We have to, as the author puts it, renounce our addiction to chronic sleep deprivation.
Like admitting we have a problem.
Exactly, and admitting that we need more sleep, giving ourselves permission to prioritize it without guilt. That was a big hurdle for the author personally, and it is for many high achievers.
Okay, mindset shift achieved. Then what? How do we figure out how good or bad our sleep actually is?
There are tools.
Yeah.
Sleep trackers, wearables, rings, etc. can give you a reasonable estimate of things like sleep duration, heart rate, movement. They're getting better.
But they're perfectly accurate.
Not perfect, no. And the book cautions against obsessing over the scores. If checking your sleep score makes you anxious about sleep, that's counterproductive.
The irony.
Right. Sometimes taking a tracker holiday is a good idea. Also worth noting, consistently long sleep times on a tracker can sometimes indicate poor sleep quality or even other underlying health issues. It's not always about maximizing duration.
Good point. What about other ways to assess sleep?
There are well-validated questionnaires. The Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, PSQI, looks at your sleep over the past month. The Epworth Sleepiness Scale measures your general level of daytime sleepiness. A score over 10 suggests a problem. And the Insomnia Severity Index, ISI, helps gauge insomnia symptoms and their impact.
Useful tools. What about individual differences, like being a morning person or night owl?
That's your chronotype, and it's largely genetic. The book touches on this, suggesting there might even be an evolutionary advantage to having different chronotypes within a group someone's always awake to keep watch.
Like staggered guard duty?
Kind of, yeah. It also explains the natural shift in teenagers towards later bedtimes and wake times. That's biology, not laziness, which is why pushing school start times later makes so much sense for them.
That's a whole other debate. Anything else crucial to check first?
Absolutely. Ruling out obstructive sleep apnea, OSA. It's really common, often undiagnosed, and has serious health consequences. The Stop Bang questionnaire is a simple screening tool doctors use. If you snore loudly, feel tired despite sleeping enough, or someone's seen you stop breathing in your sleep, definitely get checked.
Okay, stop bang. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, assuming no major underlying disorder like apnea, what are the practical steps for just sleeping better?
Right, these are the strategies for improving your odds of good sleep hygiene. The book breaks it down into optimizing your external environment and your internal environment behaviors.
Let's start outside. What's key for the bedroom?
Number 1, darkness. Absolute, total darkness if possible. The book is blunt. Light is the enemy of sleep.
Get rid of all light, even tiny LEDs.
Everything. Cover LEDs, ditch the digital clock, get blackout curtains if needed. Light signals to your brain it's time to be awake, especially blue light.
Ah, the dreaded blue light from screens.
Exactly. Modern LED bulbs in all our devices, phones, tablets, computers, TVs, emit a lot of blue light, which strongly suppresses melatonin, the sleep hormone. The advice is pretty strict. Minimize exposure for at least 2 hours before bed. Maybe swap to warmer tone bulbs in the evening.
And the big one.
Never bring devices into bed. Bed is for sleep and sex. That's it.
Okay, darkness, no blue light. What else?
Temperature. Keep the bedroom cool. Your core body temperature naturally drops to initiate sleep. A cool room around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 Celsius helps that process.
Cool room. Got it.
And interestingly, a warm bath before bed can actually help too. It draws blood to the surface, so when you get out, your core temperature drops more quickly, signaling sleep time.
Counterintuitive, but makes sense. Okay, that's the external stuff.
Yeah.
What about internal factors and behaviors?
Big ones here. First, alcohol. It might make you feel drowsy initially, it's a sedative after all, but it seriously messes up your sleep quality later in the night. It particularly suppresses REM sleep, and that impacts memory, consolidation, emotional processing, everything we just talked about. Even moderate amounts can do it. The author finds his sleep quality tanks if he has more than 2 drinks.
Good to know. What's next? Caffeine.
The classic sleep blocker. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is the chemical that builds up throughout the day, creating sleep pressure, that feeling of needing to sleep.
So caffeine stops you feeling tired.
Right. And it has a long half-life, maybe up to 6 hours or even more for some people, so that mid-afternoon coffee could easily still be affecting you at bedtime. You need to figure out your personal cutoff time.
Okay, avoid late caffeine. What else helps build that sleep pressure you mentioned?
Exercise.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic way to build sleep pressure, especially sustained moderate intensity activity like zone 2 cardio where you can still hold a conversation.
But not too close to bedtime.
Ideally, yeah. Give yourself at least 2 or 3 hours to wind down afterwards. Also, getting bright sunlight exposure during the day, especially in the morning, is crucial for anchoring your internal body clock, your circadian rhythm. Half an hour can make a difference.
Sunlight in the day, darkness at night. Simple but powerful. What about the mind? Worrying before bed.
Huge factor. Engaging in anything anxiety-provoking work emails, stressful news, even some social media activates that fight-or-flight system again. Bad news for sleep.
So create a wind-down routine.
Definitely. The advice is to have a buffer zone. Maybe write down any nagging worries or tasks for tomorrow, get them out of your head. Meditation apps can be really helpful for calming the mind.
It really sounds like, as the book says, a good night of sleep may depend in part on a good day of wakefulness.
That's a great way to put it. It's about setting the stage all day long. The author lists his 10 key rules, things like no alcohol within 3 hours of bed, no eating late, no stimulating electronics, cool dark room, consistent wake-up time.
Consistent wake-up time seems important too.
Very. Even on weekends, as much as possible. It helps regulate your circadian rhythm. But if you only remember 3 things the author suggests, fix your wake-up time, make the bedroom pitch black and cool, and protect that pre-bed hour from screens and stress.
Okay, but what if you still can't sleep? You're lying there awake.
The advice is, don't just lie there getting frustrated. Get out of bed after maybe 20-30 minutes. Go somewhere else, keep the lights dim, and do something relaxing but boring and non-functional.
Non-functional.
Meaning, don't do chores, don't pay bills, don't work. You don't want to reward your brain for being awake. Maybe read a dull book, listen to calm music, have some non-caffeinated tea, then go back to bed when you feel sleepy again. The goal is to associate your bed with sleep, not frustration.
That makes sense. And if insomnia is a persistent problem?
Then the gold standard treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI. It's actually proven to be more effective than medication long-term.
CBTI, how does that work?
It helps people identify and change thoughts and behaviors that interfere with sleep. It addresses the anxiety around sleep, helps establish good habits, and basically retrains your brain and body for better sleep. It restores confidence in your ability to sleep.
That sounds really promising for people struggling long-term.
It really is the most effective approach for chronic insomnia.
So bringing it all back, the author's journey is pretty remarkable. From sleep sacrificer to sleep advocate.
Completely. He now views sleep as a genuine performance-enhancing substance, not just physically, but mentally too.
Yeah.
As the chapter emphasizes, sleep truly is a wonder drug. It offers these incredible benefits across the board for your brain, your heart, your metabolism. It's fundamental.
And since evolution clearly decided sleep is non-negotiable, maybe we should too. Embracing it seems absolutely essential for living a longer, healthier life for our health span.
Couldn't agree more.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. What's one small change, just one thing you could try tonight to start treating sleep like the powerful medicine it truly is?
Good question to ponder.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the critical importance of sleep. We've covered a lot, and honestly, there's even more depth in the book.
There really is.
We'll definitely be exploring other key pillars of health from this work, like exercise and nutrition, in future deep dives. So please stay tuned for more insights.